Hello, and welcome back to another episode of ProdSec Decoded, a podcast where we explore the fascinating intersection of product security and AI. I'm Pratik Chowdhary.
And I'm Chiradeep Vittal. We are hosts for your show.
In today's episode, we had the privilege to feature an exceptional leader and visionary in cybersecurity, Ankush Chowdhary. He's currently serving as VP and CISO at HPE. Ankush has had a remarkable career in some of the biggest names in tech: Google, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and IBM, where he led crucial digital and cloud security innovation and transformation. He was also recently appointed to the Forbes Technology Council. He has been featured in several cybersecurity magazines and is also an author of a book on Google Cloud Professional Cloud Security Engineer Exam Guide.
In our conversation today, Ankush takes us through his experiences in cybersecurity, offering practical wisdom on navigating product security challenges in the AI era. He shared with us product security use cases and challenges, and also how enterprises should think about product security journey. Take a listen.
Hello, Ankush. Welcome to the ProdSec Decoded show. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, RSA was a couple of weeks back. How was your experience there? What were the key takeaways? I mean, Chiradeep and I were both there. We at some of the parties, but also went to the expo hall. So, would love to hear how your experience was.
Yeah, I think I wasn't surprised to see that AI dominated. I think we see a flavor of AI in nearly every security pitch in there. But I think my key takeaways and some of the things that I was very closely looking at is not how AI has been added as an add-on to an existing set of suite of products, or security tools that we have out there. But who are the key players who have just thought about bringing in and changing the entire way of delivering a security offering by implementing AI? So I think there were very few of those. I think there was one on third-party risk management that I was very closely looking at on how AI is coming in to change the way third-party risk management is done. So I think it'll be really, really good to see when we see more adoption of AI, of not just having the chatbot and LLM kind of capability implemented into the products, but how we're changing the game completely by rethinking on delivering the products on how they're currently delivered. So I think that was my key things on what I was looking at.
Yeah, and this year is supposed to be the year of the agents. So we saw agents everywhere. Question, I would just neatly divide everybody. Like, are you doing AI for security or security for AI? So anything on the security for AI that you're interested in?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point. There were few out there which I think we are looking at now. I think there are three models how we look at how AI is being used, how AI is being developed or being integrated, and then how AI is being secured. Right. And I think it's been really good journey to see on how, and this is something, a topic very close to me, is how data security is coming at the center of all of it, right? You don't have a data security strategy, you don't have an AI strategy, especially with all of those LLMs which are data hungry. I think it becomes really, really important on having a good data security story as well. And then I think some of the really good things out there was also how you're securing your own data with the likes of, Copilot coming in and, some of the other capabilities, how the agents are doing what they are being used, not just for security use cases, but other broad use cases. I think very recently wrote a blog a couple of weeks back around how we are seeing agents within an organizations who are essentially in cahoots with each other, right? So we are now giving agents in a lot of, in a non-security way. I think in security, we're still far away from giving fully autonomous capabilities for agents to execute tasks. But, sales, marketing, and some other business functions, we are seeing how the agents are performing these functions, which are fully autonomous. And, an agent in marketing is promoting something what an agent in compliance is redlining. Right. So we're seeing this internal conflict between the AI agents, which is going to be a very interesting area on how it develops as we see more and more of businesses adopting these agents. Yeah.
Actually, we saw the blog post around agentic civil war. We'll go over it a little bit more later on in the podcast. But just before we dive into the meat of it, just to kick things off, maybe would like to hear about your cybersecurity journey. Obviously, you have led security teams in some of the largest names in tech. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, and now HP. So would love to hear about your journey, what led you into cyber, and some of the key highlights and learnings along the way.
Yeah, sure. So I usually start my journey on how it started. So I've been across for 3 different continents. I have worked in Australia for about 18 years, and I started my security journey over there. And back in 2000s, security was just network security. It wasn't anything more. And then over time, we saw multiple domains come in. We saw firewalls evolve into the next generation intrusion prevention systems. We saw more and more into identity space. We saw endpoint security come in. So I think as all of these new domains kept evolving, I think my career evolved at the same time. So one of the things which I think I've been very fortunate enough is, when I look back at my career is um, I think I've done, if not all, most of the roles in security. So I've been a hands-on engineer, I've been an architect, a consultant, an advisor, and now being in the CISO capacity, running teams across different domains. So I think what it gives me, which I really value, and again, I say I've been fortunate enough to have that opportunity, is to work in each one of these domains as they evolved and how my career evolved as well, which gives me a very different perspective on looking at security and being more hands-on with my teams and understanding the domains and what the challenges are. So yes, it's definitely been a great experience just having been involved through all of those domains, not just specialized in just one area. So
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So let's just dive into product security. And just to kick things off, let's start with the fundamentals. There is a lot of talk about what is product security. How do you define it? Is it just a fancier name for AppSec, or is it different because AppSec focuses more on the code and pipelines
yeah,
and
I think
product security focuses on the holistic views?
my definition on product security and the way I look at it is much broader, right? It's more of a practice of how do you embed security into every phase of the product's life cycle, right? The design, the development, and the deployment and the maintenance, right? It's not just about how you're fixing vulnerabilities, but to ensure that security is that foundational pillar and is not an afterthought, right? So we've seen, traditionally in security, or how we are so much focused on protecting systems reactively. And product security gives us this opportunity when how we are building resilience by design. And it's that shift from how do we protect this to how do we ensure that this can't be broken, right? So some of the principles that we see that are coming into the product security is like, hey, I've got fail safe built into it, right? It's not just about me protecting it. I just want to make sure it's hard to break, right? So I think that's my kind of definition of what I look at product security as.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you talked about reactive security, protect versus can be broken. So maybe in that context, another thing that often comes up is in product security and in general within cybersecurity is the concept of proactive or preemptive versus reactive security. I mean, Gartner quotes that by 2030, preemptive security will account for 50% of IT budgets and so on. So maybe if you don't mind elaborating a little bit more on that, and also how should companies think about proactive versus reactive? How do they balance it? Yeah, would love to get your thoughts on it.
Definitely. I think let's start with reactive. I think reactive is probably what we know, and this is something we need to move away from, right? So it's more about treating symptoms, right? You wait for an attack, you wait for something to go wrong, and then you respond. And I think proactive is just like more the opposite of it, right? Saying, how do we ensure that I can anticipate threats before they happen, right? And some of the reactive model, aspects are quite outdated, right? We know the breaches are getting costlier and costlier, right? And if you look at the most recent, the cost of data breach, I think we're now in probably high 4.5 million per incident, right? Which is really expensive. We're also seeing the regulatory pressure coming in, right? We have the SEC's new rules coming in, which is demanding more proactive measures. And I think that the most important thing is that the customer trust that erodes faster when your security is an afterthought. So you can see, definitely a lot of downsides on reactive security. And then when we talk about, preventative measures or proactive security, this is the thing when we are start looking at aspects like, threat modeling, how do we secure by design and all of those principles? How do we look at red teaming? How do we look at continuous validation? and not just scanning for CVEs, right? So I think those are the things how we see, making that shift from reactive to proactive and, anticipating things that can happen. And, the two of the things that I often talk about is that, how threat modeling and red teaming can really, really help us to build that resilience in the products, throughout the different stages as we go through.
I think you talked us about in the past about threat modeling as well. So let's double click a little bit more into threat modeling. Can you elaborate in the context of this proactive product security? Why are people not doing it? What are some of the challenges in doing it effectively? And what do you suggest that enterprises do to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I see them like two game changers, right? Threat modeling, shifting security left by identifying risks during the design, red teaming for compliance, how do we stimulate attacks for validating, enterprise security controls. So let's try to dive a little bit deeper into it, right? So threat modeling is very powerful, but adoption is very inconsistent. And then I think the lot of folks out there who might agree with it and may have a different perspective, but we often see, and especially in the developer space, developers see it as an overhead, right? It is not integrated into the workflow. There is lack of standardization. We see, every team does it differently, right? We see static models become outdated as products evolve, right? And these are some of the challenges on how we see that even though some of the very mature organizations who have fairly decent product development and the lifecycle management and the security aspects of it struggle implementing this threat modeling very effectively into the process because of those, right? But what do we see in the future? I think, and this is something we are seeing, quite a lot of shift across, right? So we are seeing automated threat modeling tools. We are seeing, AI being used to suggest threats based on the architecture, the source code. We are also seeing AI now being able to execute on those threat models. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the red teaming side. I think the shift left integration, how we are embedding threat modeling in CI/CD pipelines, I think that's missing as well. So we often, when we talk about shift left, we have our SaaS, we have our DAS, we keep scanning for vulnerabilities, we keep scanning for secrets that are not being exposed, and we scan them, but we're not really embedding the threat modelings in the shift left scenario as well. And I think the third one that we see is going to be the continuous threat modeling. How do we do dynamic models that can update with code changes? I think that's going to be the next future. And I definitely see AI playing a very big role, not in just building these threat models, but then, of course, there's the human element. We need to ensure that, the corrections are being and the remediations are being enforced as well. It's not just about, building these threat models, right? So I think that's how I see how we are doing it now, the challenges, and where we see going into the future.
Yeah, and you're saying that the threat model can now feed into the red teaming or the proactive pen testing.
Yes,
Is that what you were saying?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think traditionally, when we talk about red teaming, compliance checklists, that kind of things that have been looking at, hey, my product is going to go, uh, has a new release, new features coming out. Let me make sure that it meets my compliance requirements. Whether I'm doing pen testing or red teaming, it's moving in that direction. But attackers don't follow checklists, right? So so I often course ask this question, why red teaming, right? I think there are three key things. One, it exposes gaps. This is what audit missed, misconfigurations, the logic, the flaws, all of those things is something that can be exposed through, good red teaming exercises. Uh, Validating controls in real world scenarios, like the lateral movement in a cloud environment. I think one of the things that we often see with red teaming is like, moving from shifting from left to right is how the product or the application that you're deploying is going to behave in a real world scenario. And when it's in there, then you can execute these red teaming exercises to see whether it is built for resilience or not. I think that's where red teaming really offers some fantastic value. And then preparing teams for sophisticated attacks, right? That famous saying by Mike Tyson, right? Everyone has a plan till you get punched in the face, right? And we've seen it so many times incident response plans that have been created, but when an actual incident happens, especially if a sophisticated attack happens, it just every plan fails, right? And we've seen that many times that happens. So I think it helps team prepare for those sophisticated attacks as well, which is really interesting. It doesn't come with its own challenges, right? So it's not that, why we have not seen an adoption in red teaming the way that we have seen what some of the other, aspects of security getting embedded into the product security side of things. It's resource intensive. It does require, skilled testers. It can disrupt operations if it's not planned well. And some organizations fear that failed tests, but that's the point. Um, I think I have seen a lot of organizations who are scanning and doing multiple scans, right? They're doing the DAS scannings, and they have, the CVE findings, and they have a big list of security related issues that need to be fixed. And then they look at red teaming and say, oh, I'm going to have this now come in and will add to my list of things that I need to do. So, I think when we have organizations who start looking at aspects of red teaming in that way, I think that's definitely not the direction we need to be heading into, but uh, that definitely is one of the challenge that we see within the organizations when they're adopting red teaming. How do we see some of the future aspects? Again, I think the AI angle coming in, which I was referring to earlier. So AI powered red teaming bots, I think, or agents, that can simulate, adversarial attacks. They can do it 24/7, and then we can have our compliance frameworks evolving to mandate adversarial testing. I think we do not have compliance frameworks right now that mandate the adversarial attacks. We do have, pen testing as a requirement, which is the best at what we see from a compliance side of things. But I think those two things definitely in the future, which will perhaps nudge the organizations. Compliance is always a big nudge to start adopting the red teamings into their product security lifecycle.
Yeah, and if what you were saying is that if the AI has access to the code and if the red teaming finds an issue, maybe the AI can suggest a fix as well. So
It is, yeah,
um,
certainly, yeah.
yeah, a lot of possibilities open up once the AI is embedded in the complete software development lifecycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about AI and AI agents. You wrote a very interesting post recently about the agentic warfare. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? And while you're at it, get your thoughts on the upside of AI and agents to help security teams?
Yeah, I think AI agents are fantastic. So I think my intent was not to flag the concern with that, we are not moving in the right direction. I think whenever we move in the right direction, we always see issues and challenges, and as we evolve, we address them. So my intent behind the blog was what we are seeing right now, and this is the gap, right? The gap is that we are having multiple agents within an organization doing multiple tasks. Some fully autonomous, some have some kind of a human intervention, but we are slowly moving in that direction where we're going to see more and more AIs making decisions without consulting humans, right? And I had a few use cases in there that I outlined on how we see that in sales, how do we see in compliance, how do we see in some of the other areas. And when you have agents within the organization which are taking decisions which contradict each other, which collide with each other, I think that the risk that it creates, and I was trying to put in a bit of a cyber insurance angle, was that who do you blame? Do you hold the vendor accountable for the AI making a bad decision? Do you hold your organization accountable for the way it's been deployed, for the decision it is making? And if the damage happens, within the organization or to your customers, then is there a cyber insurance right now that covers that aspect, right? So I think it's an evolving space. We are seeing some of the insurance providers who are looking into this on how to address that, and how to. And I think to be probably in the next, and it's rapidly evolving. We may see something come up in months, if not years, of this area becoming an actual concern where we would see something in real life happen that would create an issue where, I don't know if you call it an insider threat, but your own agents become an insider threat for you, right? And I had a very great example, if you are really, really training your AI agents to be able to be ethical and comply to the requirements, what if your AI agent then becomes a whistleblower for you, right? So I think we would see some of those areas which, with the adoption of the agentic AI, will evolve, and I think some of the risks related to it would also, be more highlighted than what we are seeing now.
Very
Yeah,
interesting. I
actually,
know
it was
that
a
while I was at big company jobs, I always found marketing and sales and finance misaligned with my own objectives. So
Yeah,
very familiar with that. Now this happens at 10x the space.
yeah. I think one of the things that we need to learn just from this whole AI space, and I very often use this example. If there is one vertical that has been using AI in a very sophisticated way from a very long period of time, is the aviation industry. So we have, the planes which have been operated on autopilot from a very long time. You have thousands of sensors that are being fed, and all of that information being collected and processed and very safely taking actions to ensure that the lives are not at risk. And I think there's a lot to learn from that industry. I think so. We are tapping on to some of the intel that is sitting within the aviation space. That's fantastic. So
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting blog when I read it, because humans have conflicts. So why will agents not have conflicts? It's a new way of thinking. I mean, that makes complete sense. So maybe Ankush, shifting gears a little bit into budgets and implementations. I guess one of the things that a lot of business audience like to hear is, where are the budgets for product security or maybe proactive product security coming from? Are they being reallocated from, let's say, AppSec, vulnerability management, or are they new budgets being created for that? So would like to hear your thoughts on that.
yeah, I think organization to organization, I've seen the budgets for product security just vary differently in terms of, and it really also depends on what kind of operating model an organization has, right? Some very much centralized with the security teams, and they're responsible for securing the entire organization, including the products. And it'll be more a centralized budget that's used to manage that, right? But I think larger organizations, which are very, product centric, delivering, products for the customers, you would see more autonomy that's been given to the product teams in order to make their own decisions, well, in the name of innovation. And we often see, budgets sitting with the product teams in order to make those decisions to secure that. And then we also have the hybrid models that exist, right? Where you have the security teams who might be responsible for an aspect of product security, which could be the underlying infrastructure that it's being used to run, and then anything that is source code related then sits within the product security team itself, right? So I think it really depends on the organization, on where the budgets sit, depending on the kind of operating model they have within the organization.
So maybe as we wrap up, if when organizations are trying to implement product security, they might have bits and pieces here and there. How do they stitch together? Maybe would like to get your guidance for these organizations. How should they think about product security? What are some of the key things that they should take into account as they go in on this product security journey?
Yeah, I think three things that I look at. The first one is, assess and align. Map your existing controls. Your SAST, your DAST, your threat modeling to any of the frameworks, whether it's NIST, SSDF, OWASP, whichever you are. Right, so it's really important that you are mapping to something that just keeps you aligned. Right, that's really important. The next one is, how do you automate and integrate, right? Using orchestration tools to unify your security into your DevOps, your GitLabs built into in your security scanning, right? So that's really important on how you're automating and how you're integrating. And the last one is, how do you measure and improve? How do you track your leading indicators? Number of threats that are caught in design versus production, and we know from maths, right, that anything that is caught in the design stage is way cheaper to fix than something that goes into the production is like at least 10x more expensive to fix. So I think those three things, and then for all of the what I call as the future ready organizations will do is they will treat security as a product feature, not as a compliance checklist. They will invest in the AI augmented defenses, but they will keep the human expertise, or human in the loop, in order to make some of the key decisions, and then embrace security as code. Infrastructure, policies, controls defined programmatically. I think that really gives the power to make sure that you are doing things which are standardized, and it helps you build a better more resilient product.
All right, folks, there you have it. Another fantastic episode on product security and its implementation. So, Ankush, thank you so much. This was a wonderful discussion. Lots of great nuggets of information and guidance that audience will love. So, thank you so
Oh, it was a
much.
pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure from our side too. Thanks.
Cheers.
And thank you to all our listeners for joining us on the ProdSec Decoded podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues. We'll be back again soon with another deep dive into the evolving world of product security and AI. Until next time, stay secure.